makes that power? Is it roles? Is it authority that they have? Is it influence? If you remember that. And then we went on to speak about the relationship between power and interest, and how to use the power, how people use different influence tactics to achieve what they want to achieve. So we then moved on to understanding how to negotiate. We'll start with that. As you can see, the organizational sources of power: legitimate, coercive, and reward power, and expect power. And we spoke about that it comes as a result of hierarchy, which is the position, and sometimes even reward power is being incentivized. You can use that power if you are incentivizing people, and that's a reward power. Expect power, if you're an engineer, that's the power that you have in a business. You hold that position. And referent power, which is just charisma, personal attractiveness, and identity. Cool. Just a quick recap. I'm not going to go through the details of Morgan's broader sources of power. You can, that's one thing that you would need to go through on your side to understand what's required for even the assessments. Cool. We spoke about influence and tactics, and we spoke about internal and external, legitimate and illegitimate, which was within that you can have vertical and lateral, and also illegitimate. So what's legitimate? Obviously, we all know the word is the right thing to do. You are able to complain to a higher power, that's vertical, or lateral. You can form friendships with your colleagues and come against something. Other people in the colleagues, you can retaliate. You can use the networks that you formed. It's the same externally. But illegitimate is when you start doing negative things, you sabotage other people, you do symbolic protests and revolts and riots. We have seen that in organizations, and we've also seen that in the macro environment when it comes to politics. It's the same thing. It's disagreements, it's power, it's a move, it's all politics. So when you are looking at this and you are thinking about the assignments and the work that you guys are going to be doing, please do focus on, look at a bigger scope, bigger than just the internal environment. Look at the macro, look at the politics at play at the time. That is also going to come in very handy. Okay, now I'm going to move to the last theme, which is conflict management. The last theme for this course. And here we should be able to evaluate various sources of organizational conflict that are relevant to the digital business. And we should be able to then recommend and say what appropriate strategies could be implemented to resolve conflict. So let's look at it and look at a learning outcome for influence and tactics and political action. What is conflict? There is 3 types. It's what is perceived, whether it's really imagined, it's what the other person is assuming or feeling or accepting is what has happened. It could be functional, the stimulation of ideas and like whatever improves the decisions, and it could be dysfunctional, which is infighting, aggression, and sometimes paralysis. And the causes of conflict are sometimes interpersonal. The ones that are interpersonal, you look at just disagreeableness in terms of personal differences, what I prefer, misunderstanding, which is communication breakdown, and the role of incompatibility. Sometimes someone is not in the right team. Sometimes you're not with the right partner. Sometimes the political parties at play, and they don't have anything. They have no synergies. They have nothing that they agree on. That could be a cause and a source of conflict. So environmental stressors, which is the usual, the work deadlines, sometimes when they are downsizing, restructuring in our businesses, or scarcity of resources. So we see a certain team being empowered, hiring more. And the competition for the same positions. In organizations, not usually, sometimes in old not old, but in long-standing organizations, it could be over a period of 20 years, we know that there's been only one manager in that space. No one has ever moved. So it's whatever it takes to get there. In other instances, it could be a matter of, in startups environment, it's quicker to move, but then it means when you move, you need to sometimes bustle through, fight for something, and sometimes not always the right way to do it. And so let's look at the causes of conflict intergroup, not necessarily at a personal level, where it presents most of the issues in organizations around budget, headcount, which team gets more budget, which team gets more people, which team is equipped, which team has access to information, and task interdependence. So we are marketing, we are ready to go live with the solution, but technology has not developed anything for us. They are not ready. That is definitely another source of conflict. And then ambiguity. We have seen this, unclear roles and responsibilities. Everyone could be doing anything. No one is really given a task to deliver something, and the goal differences. So what are we chasing in our department? And I think that's what I would call even a competitive advantage. So what exactly are we chasing in our department? Are we trying to deliver things first? Are we trying to deliver things fast, which is where agility matters? Or are we trying to deliver the right product, the perfect product? So we want to do, so those, a department or a team, you need to articulate what your value proposition is. Because if there is misalignment and other people are chasing profit, they only care about sales, while others are chasing safety, playing it safe outside of the rails of the risk. And so we need to align on what becomes important in our businesses. So we've seen this, what other people do. There is 5 modes of Thomas Kilmann's conflict management model, and it's the 5 dispute resolution approaches are really what we've seen. Some of them we really know them, but we haven't experienced them. And so then if we don't, what can we do? So we look at competing, which is high assertiveness and low cooperative. I'm not going to dwell onto this. I feel like we touched on it the last time. I just needed to go through this before I get to negotiation. So then you've experienced all this conflict. This conflict is as a result of your own interpersonal, or it's an intergroup conflict. Budgets, headcounts. It could be as a result of, as we've heard just now, ability to understand what the goals of the departments are. So you've experienced it. How do you then resolve conflict? How can we resolve conflict in the workplace? Well, let's look at this. One, the first phase is negotiation. And in negotiation, the first phase is preparation and planning. What does that mean? It means that you as a party that is in negotiation, you need to determine and clarify your own goals in the negotiation. You need to assume and take a moment to say, what is more important for me as an outcome? So that's where it hits we need to be honest with ourselves. Is this looking into what really works for a team? Is what you are chasing? So what's important? Let's look at it. If you are in a team and there is a conflict, what's the most important thing in that conflict? Is the most important thing, one, to be right, or to prove a point, sometimes that you are the manager or you are the leader or you know best? Or is the right thing at the time for the most important thing, the cohesiveness and the vibe in the team, setting the right things, setting standards, and not agreeing on certain things, but also disciplinary when things don't go well. So what is the most important thing for the team? What are you not willing to lose? Are you not willing to lose the person's respect? Are you not willing to? You need to jot that down. You need to understand who you are talking to. You need to understand what their issues are, what their constraints, what their styles and authority, because it's useful for you to go and be in conflict with the CEO of the company. They have more authority. So you need to weigh your options before you do that. And then you then set the targets. You need to be fair, and whatever you're setting as goals needs to be achievable. Obviously, we're not going to move from 0 to best friends, but we can agree to have a working relationship. So you need to agree upon those things. And what is the other part that I think we need to touch on the most as well is exit. So what are you not willing to settle for during conflict? What will you not settle for in terms of treatment, the way you are addressed, or in terms of even negotiation, in terms of contracts? What will you not settle for? I was in sales, and so what I used to do in sales with my sales team, someone would be sending us and saying, no, you know what, we need to get to this much. We have a goal as a business. We need to get to this much revenue by this time. That's our goal as a business. However, when we get together with a potential client, they have their goal. They need to squeeze us so much in terms of sales so that they can get to pay us the lowest. So we definitely have different goals. But what makes us meet in the middle? I want the highest price that I can get to meet my goals. Then my client wants the lowest that they can get, so they can also be cost safe. They can show cost efficiencies in their own space. What's my responsibility? My responsibility then becomes I need to find other ways to look at what's at stake, which is value. So what value do we bring? So in sales, you don't focus on pricing because pricing is neither here nor there. No one will ever accept a high price. Everyone always wants a low price. So then the question becomes, what value do I bring to your organization that will make this completely desirable? How do you determine that? You do a business case before, and you can understand with the client that this is the value that this will bring. This will bring you security. This will bring you this. This will multiply your revenues. This will do all these things. You've done that work, and so that's what you are agreeing to say. Okay, fine. For me, this is you've now got into the stage where you're saying not only for yourself but for your clients as well. This is where you can come together, and we can also look at some. Yes, Tabisha. Give me a second. Sorry about that. The other part of the planning step is to identify, you need to identify the objective. If you are not clear about what you both parties want to achieve, about the key issues, stakeholders, and to so that you can reach agreement in negotiation can be difficult and it can complicate matters and it can threaten a successful outcome in what you really want as an outcome in terms of what you are doing. So you need to know why you're actually conducting the negotiation. In a sense of conflict in the organization, I recently had a situation in another work where you have to ask the people involved, what do you want as an outcome out of these two things when you're acting as a mediator? Because it's useless for you to define, to say, guys, we need to make sure we work together. We need to make sure we are fine. Nobody cares. The people that are involved in the conflict, or if you are involved in the conflict, you need to be able to articulate what's important for you. Do you want an apology? Do you want to work together better? Do you want to show this person how wrong they are? Because all those three have different outcomes, and you need to come to a realization of what's important for you in that. So then we move to the definition and setting the ground rules. So the purpose of this is the discussion of a process where two or more parties obviously have different interests, and you need to resolve and reach an agreement. And the goal is that you need to achieve mutually beneficial outcome that satisfies the needs and the concerns of all involved. So the scope can range from resolving disputes in laying the groundwork to bigger and better, let's say, relationships as well, and diplomacy. And you need to clarify. So the next one is definitely clarification and justification. So you need to explain when you are in conflict or that you are trying to resolve a conflict, you need to clearly articulate what it is that you want. As we've said, you've already decided the why and what you want as an outcome, then articulate it. And you need to be able to ask questions, probing questions, either if you're a facilitator or you are in it, that ensure that you can understand where the other person is coming from. No generalization, obviously. And the best thing is to try and resolve misunderstandings. There's mostly miscommunications. We need to be able to get to the bottom of it and be clear about where we stand. And
sometimes, so look at this one that says providing evidence. Sometimes when you're doing justification, you're providing evidence, it could be a bit of a challenge. I'll tell you why. It could be that at the time, for example, if it's so there's two different conflicts that I want to touch on this one. If it's a personal type of conflict and I did something to you at work and we are resolving it with our manager, when you go straight into this is what you said on this email, this is what you did here, it's most of the times dilutes the conversation because the other person is feeling attacked and in the corner. Unless the person is disputing that they didn't do anything, then you can bring those up because then that's when you need evidence. But when you are negotiating in a business, and as I've just said right now, you are trying to demonstrate value to the customer that you are you are selling to, or you are trying to demonstrate value to another business unit. That, for example, you want your project prioritized, you have to bring data. While you've built relationships with them and you are very cordial, everyone understands. But when you are negotiating for your case, for what you've put in to go forward, you need to use data. You need to have a business case that proves why you think this product, if you're prioritizing, should be the one that goes first. In the space of digital transformation, if you are a product manager or a product lead, head of products, and you've come up with a strategy, while the strategy says we'll deliver the app in 2026, the mobile application, the question becomes, in the app, should you start with the ability for people to log in? Let's say you're in banking space. Should you start with the ability for people to log in and do banking and transfer money? Or should you start with the ability for people to log in and increase their limits? And to decide on which feature or the right approach to take is you need to look at what you are driving. So that common goal. Are we driving revenue? Are we driving self-service? Meaning, are we moving people away from customer contact centers to want them to use the app? Whichever is the goal and the underlying reason, the strategy, that's what you implement. If your goal is to achieve more revenue, then it means transfers are the leading reason. You can make a business case and say, we'll start with transfers. Why are you doing so? It's because once you say we'll start with transfers, you know that you'll get more money by people having the access and ability to transfer. If, however, the reason and the business understanding and motivation is to drive down the cost of acquisition, meaning the self-service aspect, then you are better off allowing people to be able to download their statements, to view their balances, to move money within certain accounts. You should be able to do that, to have people have access to their excess money on their loan accounts. So that's what it means in the digital space. It could be a combination of a few things. As we said, justification is key. In the business world, it's bringing data. In the digital world, it's bringing data on what feature or what program we should go with first based on the returns. And the returns could be financial, they could be driving down cost of acquisition, they could be brand related. So it depends on what the strategy for the business goal is for at that time, which is what becomes an issue. So you need to be able to highlight your value. As I've said, like ROI, key performance metrics, and that's key. That's the only way. Currently, if you go and present a solution, I'm sure you've all have done business planning. If you do go and present a solution to your leadership team during business planning, meaning when you are budgeting for the following year, you cannot present any solution without KPIs because you are negotiating. What are you doing there? You are negotiating for access to funds, and you are trying to prove that you will use these funds for business outcomes. And so whatever you do must be aligned to the business strategy and the business outcomes. If the business outcomes are to go a certain direction to grow and revenue exponentially, and you are focused on cost saving, you are going to miss it because the business at this stage is busy investing. The strategy says invest more on bringing more revenue. So then your kind of conversations and what you put for business planning and your motivation is completely different. The motivation needs to be revenue, needs to be stickiness. It needs to be, how do we get the money? How do we keep the money? So what are the right retention strategies? And also, how do we then make sure that there's no churn in the business? That's on the business side, which I think it's the more focused, because on the personal side, as long as there is clarity, you are clear about exactly what's important for you and what's important for the team. And most of the times, the outcomes that you want should not be about you, they should be about the team. So you fight for the team. If your team, someone else is pulling, this usually happens. Everyone is going a certain direction, but there's one individual who's going that direction. You know that breaks the team cohesiveness. So then what do? You get them to align to the team. You explain to them the importance. I'll play a certain video just now that shows that we need to look beyond the processes. We need to look beyond the problems. We need to actually find certain things. The video is more on the personal, interpersonal negotiation, not necessarily the business one. So how do we do this? Now then we move to bargaining and problem solving. We have preparation. We've prepared, we understood exactly what it is that we want out as an outcome, what's important for us and what we will not go without. And you're defining and you have ground rules. What are we not willing to lose? What's that important? For example, in your team, it could be, as a team, we're not willing to live with mediocre type of work. We're not willing for anyone who comes in and kills the team spirit, the drive. So then that is a ground rule. Already when you're going into a conversation with a person, you are showing them how they are taking what has been agreed upon by the team. And then you move to clarification and justification. You are clear about your standards and your goals, we've said. And if it's a business deal, you can business case justify why this needs to go forward. It's a personal one. You can definitely clearly articulate what needs to be the next steps. And then we go to bargaining and negotiating. And we look at competitive and transactional. So sometimes in business world, you look at it because bargaining focuses on what you're trying to achieve as the goals that you've set up, and then what you are able to exchange. And also you look at counter proposals. What then comes next? So you by the time you don't get shocked in a call, that's what I've learned. You need to consider all possible scenarios before you get into a meeting and you get into a call. If this, then this. If that, then this. You've considered all possible scenarios and you are clear about what's the most important thing. And you already have concessions, like things that you are willing to say, okay, fine, we can move forward in this. Like, this is fine, we can move forward with this, or we cannot move forward with this. You have a win and lose focus. If you are bargaining, you need to show the other party that you are willing to lose something as well for them to gain something. In a business deal, it could be that you are saying we will short circuit the time to deliver the solution while we will not negotiate on price, because your definition and ground rules were that price is out of the picture. And this is just offline. What I've picked up when I was in sales, in digital sales, is that you actually need to get to a point where if you're negotiating with anybody, price gets out of the picture. We can talk about anything else but the price. We can talk about what more value we can add. We can talk about how effective the solution can be, but price is not where we are going, because it's price is price. You've built it based on the value that the solution brings. So when a person wants to negotiate the price down, then move certain things with value. What does that mean? It means that if you have a checkbox of certain things that a customer can get from you in your platform, they can do this, they can do this, they can do this. By the time they want to decrease the price, then the value of what they get also decreases. So if they were able to get to the platform and do 5 things, if they want to decrease the price, then we close off 3 out of those, and they can only do 2. I'm making an example based on how much they're willing to pay. You are trying to teach them that value is commensurate. Value is equal to the price that you get. If you decrease the price, you decrease value. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this. Usually on LinkedIn, there is it's usually from the marketing agencies. When a client comes to you and they define exactly what they want, and it's great and it's big and it's shiny and it's glossy, and then though what they have budget for is nothing. It's like a very watered down version of that. That's exactly what that means, is that people, you can say whatever you want, can dream whatever, but your price negotiation is quite key, and the price is commensurate to value. I'll pause here. I feel like I've been speaking for quite some time, and check if anyone has any questions or anything that you want to bring up. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Bonang. So now we've moved on to closure and implementation. This stage, one thing that I've picked up is that when you've been talking for quite some time and everyone is sort of like tired, it's towards the end. Before you reach conclusion, you need to take a break. This is just my personal view. Whether it's a not personal conflict, whether it's a person-to-person conflict that you are resolving with you and the other person, before it goes to, okay, so what do we do next? You need to say, let's take a moment. A moment could be, let's go for a break, quick walk to the bathroom. If it's in space of a call, you can just ask everyone, does everyone need water? Because you need to get into space with a clear mind. What I've figured out is that sometimes you might have understood we've been going around the same circles that we think we hear each other. We are saying the exact same thing, but it's completely opposite in terms of the implications. And everyone keeps saying, yeah, I agree, because everyone wants to sound agreeable. When actually with the implementation of what they're agreeing on is completely different. So we need, if it's your party, you are responsible for it, you need to say, can I confirm, for example, you've just had these two employees on the interpersonal example, and they were fighting or you are one of them. At the end, they have already articulated their goals, what they would want to walk away with. At the end of it, you ask them, how do you think we can move forward? How do you think you need to move forward? They state these 777 things that they're willing to do. I apologize. I'll take back what I said. I'll bring back the desk that I took. I'll bring back the chair. I'm making an example. At the end, you cannot just say, oh, thank you, everyone. This was a fruitful conversation. Bye. It does not work like that. At the end of it all, you need to get to an action plan that says, hey, you're confirming that you will return the desk by tomorrow at 2. Make an example. You agree that you are apologizing. Take this opportunity to apologize. And if in a more formal setting where it's an agreement around contracts, it's updating the contracts to agree to the terms that you are agreeing upon right now. The terms, sometimes before they even get to the contract, they need to be typed down on email and sent the clauses so that everyone agrees to it before we send the contract for circulation again. And you can look at potential issues, like here, there could be an issue with something else. You need to find that out and you need to then anticipate that. That's actually very important. And at the end of it all, you need to be able to, the most important thing is that you need to know what the next steps are. And everyone needs to be clear about what is expected of them at the point in time. The one that I've found out that works is for if you are having a session and it's a disciplinary session, it's not just negotiation, contracting, it's not the business one, it's people. You need to find a way to bring things, to bring people back to the why and the when. I've realized that when you let people know that, listen, we're a team. We need to work together. We have to work together. So it's not an option of, well, I will still work in the same team, but I will be office to us. No, it's not an option. We need to work together. If there's anything where we are misaligned, it will impact what we're able to deliver. And you might think that you are delivering your work and your job, but the feeling that someone feels towards you that's not good, it's not a win space. So you need to be able to articulate those. And what I found sometimes works is just putting in an appropriate joke. Now, don't joke about the situation, but putting in a joke that applies to both parties at the time, just to still things down, so that it can break the little barriers on the outside. And then maybe even though they are still crossed at each other, but there's that common ground of then there's a willingness to engage. So the outcomes after action is either agreement, you either agree, and don't be afraid of stalemate, where it is, there's no one else, especially in business ones. In business ones, you need to be comfortable with things being in a stalemate. And you can also postpone the conversation and say, hey, let's talk again later. Like, not everything has to be closed immediately, because sometimes when you force closure, you are forcing, you, you are more focused on ticking the box as opposed to actually solving the real problem. So sometimes when the problem is not solved, pause and say, let's continue with this next time. And obviously it will be whatever. If it's written down, that's great. But the most important thing is, after each communication, write them an email or whatever and say, hey, we spoke, we had this issue, we've resolved it, we've agreed that going forward, this is what we're going to do, and you list those things down. That becomes very important. Give me a second. I want to share the slides that have the video. Please let me know if you can hear this before I start it. As soon as I start, I'll just mute myself. You can just type, and I'll see when someone unmutes that you can't hear it, but I did share it with sound. Allow me to pause on that one. I will send you guys the, I'll upload the full video, the slides with the video. But just by listening to that, what is one thing that we all can say we are picking up? Bachokoze, anything? Bona?
No, nothing from my side.
Bona? Tabiso? Caesar? So what I was able to pick up from, okay, cool, no problem. I'll share it again. Was anyone else able to hear? Okay, cool. Okay, fine.
I struggle to hear.
Okay, sure. Must have been the low volume, but nevertheless, I'll share. But what this lady was talking about was on the people front, when there is conflict, we must not be quick to go to the end. This is, if you do this, this is what will happen. And so then we institute the punishable outcomes. We must actually listen more to what's causing the issue, beyond what's causing the issue here, the one that they're facing, but what are the underlying issues between with that person. And she was mentioning that this lady at the work and in a plant had struggled because she was grappling with the loss of a son, and she was using the abusive language, yes, and she still continued. The part where I stopped it was when she says that that lady still signed the admission, like when you are being punished at work, they still signed the acknowledgement that what they did was wrong, and the disciplinary and even the warning, but they were not told off. They were rather brought forward to say, you know what, you could be having, we understand that you're having issues, but the stance of where we stand with abuse doesn't change. However, the outcome was, please do let us know when you feel like you are losing it, you're not coping at the plant. You have every right to pack your bags and leave. And not everyone was agreeing. The manager of the plant, because they've got production targets to meet, they were not happy about it. But it worked because that lady had only one incident after that when they felt like taking their bags. Remember, you're also playing in the person's emotion. How can they be the one every time they take their bag and leave? So then she could only do that once, and she had to stand her ground as well, and but continue acting in a way, because she was punished for the way that she was speaking. That was not right. Not punished, but that was recognized. So I think it's quite important that we realize that not every time you have to be going for the kill, especially with people. You need to understand what has changed in their life circumstances, because that could be the reason why they're acting this way. Now, it doesn't mean that what they are doing is acceptable because of what they're going through. It just means that we act with care while we institute the right measures to make sure that this doesn't happen again. That's it for today. What I will do is that I've already uploaded these slides already. I will upload today's video. I need to create a YouTube channel for that. And next week we've moved out of lesson outcome 4. We are going straight to 5, and 5 is not that long. So we'll have to do it and close it next week. Because what I want to do at the end of this, I want to close lesson 5. I want to close the learning outcome units 6, and then we can go through the assignment. So I'll try and break down the assignment because I think that's quite important. People did well in the one that we had, but I think there's a case that we can have where we can do better if we understand what's required of us. If no questions, I say thank you and have a great night. Thank you.